African Ascent is honored, as usual, to bring you some of our prominent scholars, writers, activists, film producers, and to a significant extent, for the past 1 year or so, African Ascent has been willing to serve as Berklee College's outreach program. As many of you know, Berklee College is considered to be the leading college for the study of contemporary music, and the guests that I specifically recruit from Berklee College of Music are chosen because of the prominence and conspicuous importance of their projects. Tonight then, for the second time, African Ascent is truly honored to bring Professor Julie Rold from Berklee College of Music. Welcome to African Ascent.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So it's only appropriate that I read the biography of such a noted scholar. I could just as easily do it extemporaneously, but that would be quite disrespectful, considering the kinds of expansive works that this particular professor of English at Berklee College of Music, who is also a very well-known fiction writer, has done. So here is what I have gleaned from the truly impressive range and depth of works that she has done. Professor Julie Rold is a fiction writer and playwright whose work has appeared in the Missouri Review, the Boston Globe magazine, our very own Boston Globe magazine, the annual Best New Voices collection, quite prestigious, among others, and also named for a Pushcart Prize, again, quite important. Her plays have been produced at Boston Center for the Arts, the Electric Theatre, and Boston Playwrights Theatre. A winner of the Artist Grant in both playwriting and fiction from the Massachusetts Cultural Council, Professor Rold has also received writing awards from St. Botolph Club Foundation, the Rope Walk Writers Retreat, and the Steelgrass Foundation, and most recently was named a Fulbright Scholar to El Salvador in 2014 to 2015. I've seen the video version of her spectacular travels there, which I'm sure is going to be part 2 of her memoir after part 1 is published. Her memoir, Love in Foreign Lands and Other Familiar Places. Incidentally, I read this in several sittings during the weekend. Mesmerizing, dazzling, surreal writing, and at the same time marked by plainness and clarity. So to go back to the biography, I was a bit overtaken by something else. Was named a Fulbright Scholar in El Salvador in 2014 to 2015. Her memoir, Love in Foreign Lands and Other Familiar Places, a series of interlinked autobiographical novellas based on her decade of living and working around in Kenya, Turkey, England, and China, has twice been among the winners of the Faulkner Wisdom Award. A native of Kentucky, Professor Rold now lives in Boston, Massachusetts, where she's a professor of English and creative writing at Berklee College of Music. Thank you. So now we begin.
Thank you. What a wonderful introduction.
Thank you so much. So well deserved. So beginnings are very difficult for me, although I've been doing this now for 12 years, I think.
Yeah.
Every time I have to begin an interview, I face obstacles of exactly where to begin. So give me some time to meditate about how I should begin. I think I should begin with the following question. As I said, I have been an admirer of your work for the past 8 or 9 years, and you've been quite kind.
And I of yours.
Yes, thank you so much. You've been quite kind to me. My 2 works of fiction have the bearings of your recognition and your appreciation, which means quite a lot to me, because you're a very honest and intelligent critic. So I hope I'm going to do justice to your work this evening. So my first question is this. It took me the entire weekend to read the memoir from the beginning to the end. I'm not exaggerating when I say I couldn't even put it down.
I'm thrilled to hear that. That's so exciting.
You write so well.
Thank you so much.
I could just sense that he must have really bled over these sentences.
Oh, I did.
Yeah, I could tell, because the level of truly perfection to which you brought them bears pains of labor. I know, as somebody who tries to write, how difficult plain and clear writing is. It's very easy to write complicated paragraphs. Anybody could do that. To write plainly and clearly, the way Hemingway has done it, is not an easy task. No wonder why Hemingway, among other things, ended up drinking excessively. Because, as you can imagine, it's so boring to look at the same sentence again and again and again. As you know, it took me about 8 years to write Cambridge Days.
It took me this long to write this book too. 8 years to write the one I'm working on.
And I cannot read it anymore.
No, it's awful,
I
isn't
cannot
it? I mean, your book is
my
not
own
awful.
work.
The process is awful.
Yes,
the process
it's
is
awful.
Your book is amazing. The process is awful.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Yes.
So my first question is this. I don't know how to classify this work, because it's both fiction and non-fiction. It is real and surreal. And so is this style of communicating your experiences. It is done through the objectivity of the real, but also the fantasies and imaginations of the surreal. And you somehow manage to do this at once. So what am I going to call this work? A book? A novella? A memoir?
Yeah.
I don't know what to call it.
I
What
don't
do you
either.
call it?
I'm really struggling with this myself because, I feel that fundamentally I wanted to be honest, about the experience and relate something of what happened. But in that process, it's very difficult because what you live, what one lives in the past, what you go through is much bigger experience than what you should be writing about. On some level, you have to create any kind of story or meaning, you need a really strong lens, right? And so I know that there's a really strong lens as I'm looking at that, body of those years. I mean, I was abroad about a decade, nearly a decade, about 8 years. So I just picked, the 4 most significant times and really tried to put a really strong lens on that experience to talk about not only what happened, but why it was important to me, and to make it beautiful if I could for the reader. I think that those were my goals. I hope so. I don't know. But like you said, I worked so hard on it all. It was so painful, and I'm still not done. I'm still tweaking the final section before I send it out, and thinking about what it is, because I think in the world of trying to sell a book, it's really important to know what it is. So I'm a little worried about that as I prepare to send it out into the world. You're one of the few people who's read the whole thing, so I'm really. People have read sections of it.
I read the whole thing.
But I'm really touched that you read the whole thing and enjoyed reading it as well.
Every minute of it. This is one of the few works that I felt like reading, but then you get bored and then you put it away, hoping that when you look at it with a different mood, you may be inspired to read further. With this work, I couldn't wait. And
I'm so thrilled that you felt
that's
that way.
from my heart. Now, there are 4 parts.
Sure.
I think I want to do justice to the first 2 parts and do them with analytic dissection.
Yeah, well, the first part obviously is about my time in Kenya. So.
It is the first part that drew me in, and I'm still mesmerized when I think about the lions.
Oh, that's so.
The way you describe the animals, it just took me to another zone of being. I have never read anything that described animals of the mind, as he called them, animals of the mind, by making them real. That's quite an achievement. So, if you don't mind, I would like us to read some of your favorite sections.
Sure.
My favorite sections are these sections on the animals.
Okay, absolutely.
But I'm also equally intrigued by the first paragraphs on Lucy.
Oh, yes, so interesting. I'm fascinated by all of that.
You did that so well.
Oh, that's so kind. I mean,
on
it's
our
so important,
ancestors.
right?
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And it was just done just right in this sense. There is no exaggeration. There is no self-consciousness. It is simply an effective rendition of the history of the human species. And you make a point to remind the reader that we are all from a single place.
That's right. It's so important. You know, I think that first line, the line that meant the most to me that I came up with in that section was, you know, the line, "In the beginning there was Africa. You know, this is how the book of Genesis should begin." I mean, I really feel that.
I want you to read that. Let's begin with that.
Okay. All right. Let me find
read
my.
as much as you
No.
want.
I'm going to bore the listeners
No,
if
you
I
won't.
read too much. But I think it's. I'll read what, a paragraph. Let me get to that. Okay. So the part from "In the beginning there was Africa."
Yes,
That.
yes.
Okay. All right. I need my glasses now. Since I've been on the show, my eyes, you know, I've gotten old and my eyesight is deteriorating. The last time I was on the show, which I was so thrilled to be on. Okay, so here we go. This is from the first section, which is called Lions of the Mind. This is not the opening, it's a little bit past the opening. All right, so in the beginning there was Africa. This is how the book of Genesis should begin. Everything that makes us human is African. Our spine, pelvis, hip, toe, and, I am certain, our consciousness. Among the earliest evidence of our human origins is a discovery made at Laitoli in Tanzania in 1971. 2 hominids walking upright left their footprints behind on a layer of wet volcanic ash, preserving them perfectly, as if 3.6 million years ago they had walked across a freshly poured sidewalk. They are considered to be Australopithecine. There is related fossil evidence found in the same Rift Valley system that dates to a similar time. But anatomically, archaeologists note that the creature's gaits and feet, one male and one female most likely, are basically indistinguishable from our own species, Homo sapien.
That's beautiful. Read a little more.
Okay. I've always been fascinated by human prehistory, an interest that began in high school, in part, I think, as my attempt at a rebellious response to the Bible Belt ethos of rural Kentucky, where I grew up. I took several early anthropology courses in college and learned more. Australopithecus afarensis, Homo habilis, Homo erectus. Still, the idea to go to Kenya was born at the University of Edinburgh, where I spent my junior year. It was there, in a shabby old cinema palace in the Old Town, not far from my dorm, that I first saw Out of Africa. It was among the most romantic movies I'd ever seen, A Gone with the Wind for 1985. And there was also an English guy, Freddie, who lived down the hall from me, who'd been to Eton and spent his gap year in East Africa, and who told me more about it. How he'd bought his own Land Rover to drive around the Masai Mara, how the sun on the equator went down incredibly fast, how even though it wasn't as high, Mount Kenya was actually much harder to climb than Mount Kilimanjaro, how he'd had to hide under his carriage of the Rover for several hours once in some little town because local people had been shooting at each other. With images of the movie in my head, Meryl Streep as Karen Blixen, who would become Isaac Dynson, striding around in jodhpurs on safari with her lover, I could feel how exciting Freddie's own stories seemed. But it was more than this, too. It made my world larger. It gave me a new understanding of the possible. Good.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Now,
That part's that part's kind of the introduction to, in addition to just wanting to introduce the idea of human prehistory, which really has always fascinated me.
Yes.
I wanted, I had to also get some exposition in about, my own past. So I was just trying to braid it all in. It's very tough, to bring in as to bring in your theme, to balance it all, to get the right amount of information in for the reader. It's a task that just is endlessly difficult. I look at it now and I don't even. There are some parts of this that I labored over for so long. I was convinced I would never get it right. It took that long. So, and then some parts were easier, like that first paragraph that I wrote about about in the beginning there was Africa. That came very easily, right? So I don't know. Most of the time it comes hard. I always want it to come easily, but most of the time it's very hard.
How long were you in Kenya?
Only about 10 months in total. And it was a very difficult time. I was, I think I went there very, very ill prepared. I think I had I think when we begin to travel, we have a vision of what it should be based on our romantic ideas, largely from movies. But we get there and, it's not that, and it shouldn't be that. And the reality is better, but it's also harder. And I think that's one of the most important lessons I would like the reader to understand from the book, that as we encounter other cultures, first of all, it's a privilege to do so, and I felt very privileged to even be there. But also just that it's really important to go in with almost no expectation, so that you can be open to what it is, as opposed to what you think you want it to be or what it might be. That's very important. But I'm sure you've had a similar experience yourself, in the opposite direction.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
I mean, that's the whole thing, right?
Yes.
That no matter where you're from in the world, when you engage in that process of going to another culture, it's always transformative, but never in the way that you think it's going to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And now, in the first part, there is also a plot. So we move from the memoir to the fiction. You manage in a single day to create an incredibly tense situation in which you get lost.
Yes.
During which time you couldn't be listened to. I read that section on so many layers, actively looking for the feminist in you, who is dealing with a very stubborn male.
Yes.
Who just doesn't listen. That's one layer. The second layer is the fictive ability of creating the plot in the Aristotelian sense, a plot that works.
Yes, except
for me, the most difficult part of writing, in which I am utterly hopeless, is creating plots.
Oh, it's so hard.
Incapable.
I don't think you're incapable. You're no. You're not incapable at all. You're not incapable at all. You do very well in that. It's it's incredibly hard, right? That's the hardest part of writing.
But you did it. And
yeah. Well, I mean,
you must have worked hard on that section.
I worked incredibly hard on that section.
I could, because that's when what you were speaking about earlier, balance has to be maintained.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can't be excessive. You can't be yes, you can't be excessive, and you can't be too deficient. You just have to create the right space at the right time with the reader in mind.
Yeah, well,
and you did it.
Yeah, well, it helped because it was a life and death situation, and it really was. It was truly a life and death situation, which I lived through. And
I see.
And so, I think knowing that, I felt it was worthy of telling the story about it. But even within that, you're right. Even within that reality, which I lived through, still shaping it as a plot is another issue.
Incredible.
And it was very difficult because basically for most of the time we're just wandering around.
Yes.
And that's not very dramatic, right?
No.
So to figure out how to tell that in a way that was dramatic was very challenging.
It was.
Yeah.
I have read a South African writer who is one of my models, Kutsa,
Oh, yes.
in Waiting for the Barbarians.
Yes, yes.
His gift, as you know, is what I call the control of impulse. He controls language. He doesn't let language control him when he's dealing with very difficult situations,
Yes.
such as pain and torture. Just does it right, such that you don't condemn him for being too sensitive, nor do you forgive him when you think he's not being sensitive, because he combines these two extremely well, and he takes you to the interiors of pain. You did something very similar in this adventure.
Wow, I'm honored.
No, I mean it.
I'm
I
honored
read
to be
it
compared.
because I was so jealous of you.
I'm always
Because
jealous
I've
of
been
you.
trying-
I'm jealous of you when I read your beautiful lyric
Yeah, but I
lines
think-
of description. It's amazing, my friend. Yes.
But what you've done there, and I kept on saying to myself, when is this going to end? Because I wanted to see the end.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you had
So-
that feeling. That you did makes me so glad. That you wanted to keep reading is the best thing.
Of course I did.
Yeah.
Because of your ability to control language, you created this tense situation. It's so tense that instead of killing you, it encourages you to stay on because you're going to be rewarded at the end. You pulled it off so well. Let's talk about that.
Sure.
Okay. So how did he do it?
I don't know. You know, it was, again, so incredibly hard to figure out how to tell the story, because even though I knew I had a very dramatic core, you know, are we going to get out of this situation or not? In itself, I mean, I think I reflect on that too. When you're in a situation like this of life and death, I mean, the issue is, normally it doesn't feel very dramatic because your mind is working very hard to convince yourself that everything's okay, right? So in a way, for me, during that time when we were lost, we didn't have any water, we were so lucky several times. So, you know, I think I did it by, you know, setting up the problem so that you knew that we were in some level of danger. But then in order to make the time pass, I had to do things like reflect. You know, that's when I could that's when I could bring in the more philosophical parts of the book, right? Yes. I could meditate on what it meant to be human, so I think I did it that way too. Successfully or not, I don't know. I'm glad you thought it was. But yeah, I don't know how I did it, except to know that I really tried to be honest to the experience of what had happened. At the same time, knowing that my task was to move beyond that too, in some way. So I don't think I answered that question especially well. It was so hard. It was so hard to do it. I mean, I probably, you know, like you said, you spent 8 years on Cambridge days. I mean, I've been at work on this book for 8 years. This section came relatively a little more easily because the time span was shorter. It was a 24-hour period. That helped. That helped a lot. You know,
Amazing.
It's when you try to make time pass that's so difficult, right? When you're writing. I mean, like those longer ones that took place over 10 months. I think the second one, My Turkish Professor, is about, it takes place over eight or 9 months. Yeah, that was harder.
Well,
yeah.
the second part is on my favorite.
That's your favorite?
Oh, the Turkish Professor.
That's your favorite one. Okay, I'm interested.
I have two favorites.
What's your other favorite?
The Turkish Professor and Lions of the Mind.
Is it? Yeah. For me, I mean,
I'm still working on China.
Yeah.
Because it's I'm finished.
Yeah. The last one is still.
Yes.
I'm still trying to get that one.
Yes.
To be honest, I think the hardest one for me to write was actually the third one. Mm-hmm. The third one was the hardest one to write by far. Mm-hmm. But the one that's called the one that's the same title is the Love in Foreign Lands and Other Familiar Places. So I don't know. It was. Yeah, a long process of just sitting with it. Sitting with it, you know, for years to try to get the structure, the shape right, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now,
Yes.
I must ask you to read these sections on the animals.
Okay, sure, sure. I'm
That-
trying to remember
that
which
is
one you
where,
want. Which one would you like?
The lions.
Okay, if I can find it. The ones where we come across them?
Yes.
Let's see. Where is that page?
You're seeing them through
the
their
first-
eyes
for the first
first
time?
time.
Is it? Let me
That
just
whole
get.
section on the animals is just
Okay.
a masterpiece.
I'm so glad you think so. Okay. Yeah, and we didn't. Have you been to Kenya? Well, I'm looking for
No,
this. You've never been.
Ethiopia.
I know you're from Ethiopia, but I was
Only
wondering
Ethiopia.
only Ethiopia.
No.
So you never traveled
No,
in other parts of
no.
Africa.
But you made me feel like going to Kenya now.
Yes,
To
but I'm
visit
sure the
those
landscape. I mean,
places,
I'm sure. Well, Ethiopia's got a very varied landscape. I know, but I'm sure parts of it resemble
Parts of it,
resemble
yes.
that part of Kenya,
Parts of it.
right? Okay, let me see. I'm sorry, my
It's
friend.
the
I'm just looking to
description of
find
the
it.
eyes.
The eyes. Okay, hold on.
Those
Okay.
plates.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here it
You
is.
must read this
Okay.
description.
So where is that one?
I wish I had brought my own computer, had underlined
Yes.
all this. In fact,
Okay. So it's
if you
what?
gave
Okay.
me that part, I'll even read it for you. if
Why don't you
like,
read
yeah?
it? I'd
Yes,
rather you
just
read
give
it.
me the parts.
So okay, this is
I would
where
love to
okay,
read
this is where we
this.
turn on the flashlight.
Yes.
I'm sure you read it and I will.
Yes.
And then
That's right.
there's that whole section where the lights
Yes,
come on. That
I'll
one,
read just a
yeah,
few
you,
and
you,
then
you,
I'll give
it's
it
always
to-
nice to hear somebody
okay.
else read your work. It's so hard to read your own, I find. Yeah. That part? Or do you want a little
Yes.
earlier?
Let me see. Yes, okay.
Okay,
This
good.
is
I'm
where I
going to
want
listen to you
begin.
read it and see how it sounds from somebody else.
It was then that Charles said, "Wait, my flashlight." He asked me to stop so he could open the flap while it was still on my back and fish it out of my back. It wasn't so dark that we needed a light, and the road was wide and flat, and we knew in which direction we had to walk. But a light could be handy, especially if we needed to signal somebody. It had occurred to me that just maybe Arlene was worried about us being gone so long and might have gone out to get help. So perhaps a ranger was on the alert. Charles turned on the flashlight to test it, sweeping it in an arc. On that night plain, hundreds of eyes gleamed back at us. They popped out everywhere. Everywhere Charles shined the light, little bits of gold glowing in the dark. It was shocking, even though I had seen the animals myself before the sun had set and knew they were there. But before they had seemed active and not concerned with us at all. Now, at the light from Charles's flashlight met their eyes, they just stood staring back, unblinking. The light was not powerful enough, nor were we standing close enough to be able to see their bodies clearly. Only their basic forms and the shining orbs of their eyes. You could make out the outlines and tell by the relative size what they were. Again, mostly zebras and gazelles, it seemed. But I couldn't be sure about this. We kept walking on, Charles shining the light around the brush in all directions. Still those eyes were everywhere, and there seemed to be more, as if in the dark, somehow, they had managed to multiply. I wasn't frightened, just unnerved. Not wanting to waste the battery, Charles turned the light on, only for short periods of time. Each time he did so, they were there, looking back, as if they had nothing else to do but stand around and wait for us.
Oh,
You might
it
want to
sounds
read
great
more.
when you read it.
You might want to read more. Read more, a little more.
All right.
Please.
A half moon came up over the ridge, and there was more visibility than before. Just keep it off a while, I said. He understood, commenting, we already know what's out there, anyway. It was clear, somehow, we both felt better not seeing the animals. It was easier that way, not having to watch them in all directions, from where we were going and where we'd been. And they were obviously wary enough of humans to move off as we approached, so it wasn't as if we were in danger of running into them. We walked and walked. By my reckoning, it was at least 4 miles, but it seemed like much more. I remember we talked a lot. Being out there on the plane at night brought us together again, but I can't remember much of what we said beyond speculating about how much further it was to the gate and whether or not Arlene would have the presence of mind to do anything to help us. We did talk a bit about why the second guy hadn't come. Charles figured he must have gone back another way. There isn't another way, I said. This is the only road in and out of the park. He didn't argue with me. So there's some more later on about it goes on in a similar way for a while, but then we turn it on, and of course, and we see we hear something, right?
Yes.
I'll read that little part.
Yes.
It was then that I heard something. Sensed is a better word. We sight-loving Homo sapiens rely so heavily on our eyes that we get confused sometimes among our other senses. Maybe there are senses beyond the 5 we acknowledge that have meaning in a way we have long forgotten to believe. I felt this presence from deep in myself, something out there in the dark, right on the road in front of us. Did you hear that? I whispered to Charles. He whispered back, what? Turn on the light, I said. He shined the flashlight, and instantly, larger glowing lights, as big as plates, jumped out at us. It was amazing how different they were from the eyes we'd seen before. They were much larger and glowing, like the shining of the sun as opposed to the pinpricks of twinkling stars. And they had the quality not of waiting, but of reaching out. From what I could see, their forms were different too, still large but not moving like the zebras, with a more fluid rolling movement. I could just make out the lines of their torsos. Coldness seized my arms and legs and heart. Lions, I said out loud to Charles, to God, to someone in the black universe. Okay.
That's amazing. That is the part. This is the part that I read again and again. Just this one here, just this paragraph. If you may
Go,
read
please.
it again.
Yes, I'd
Study
love
it.
Yes.
A structure. He shined the flashlight, and instantly larger glowing lights, as big as plates, jumped out at us. It was amazing how different they were from the eyes we'd seen before. They were much larger and glowing, like the shining of the sun as opposed to the pinpricks of twinkling stars. And they had the quality not of waiting, but of reaching out. From what I could see, their forms were different too. Still large, but not moving like the zebras, with a more fluid, rolling movement. I could just make out the lines of their torsos. Coldness seized my arms and legs and heart. This is amazing to me. How long did it take to craft this?
I don't know. Actually, as you read it now, I just feel like I'm hearing flaws that I want to correct because I'm constantly thinking about how to make it better, you know?
What flaws?
Oh, I don't know.
jump
I
at you?
might cut out some of, I might cut a little bit, but I might not. I'm just too lazy. I can't bear to
don't
look at
think
it
so.
anymore.
I think you just did it right. Have you noticed how short the paragraph
No, it is very short.
and how much you've condensed in it?
Yeah. No,
and
it
how
is.
you managed to distinguish the lions
Yes.
from the others in terms of creating
Right.
an argument for their dignity,
Yes.
for their gentleness, for their greatness, for all that
Yes.
we come to know
Yes, it's
lions
true.
for. And this is done just right, not in a Hollywoodish way in which words are abused, but in a writerly way in which you capture the dignity of the lions.
Oh, that's amazing. You know, I think I was focused more on, at the time, of trying to, I mean, there really was a different quality to them. You know, we had been wandering around that day and hadn't seen much. And, you know, the whole argument is the end is that the guy I'm with tries to pretend, you know, tries to act like we didn't see them at the end. And I know we did, you know, so I wanted to distinguish how I can see them in the dark, even though I couldn't see them. You know, it was a very challenging thing to do.
That's what you've done
Yeah.
here. At first, I thought that you were making an idealistic argument that our physical senses are so unreliable that they occasionally make us see things that we really have not seen.
Yes.
Because I could also sense that you're philosophically disciplined.
Oh, that's
So you took me there. But then I took a second look at what I thought you were doing. And as you just said, you were gently arguing with your partner,
yes.
who was making the idealistic argument that these are just lines of your mind, that they are not empirical lines. But then in this section, you create a paragraph in which you make a case for what you did not, strictly speaking, see through your mind,
Yes.
but actually saw something through
Yes.
your five senses.
Yes, exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yes, I think that's really beautifully said. I mean, gosh, I wish you were around to always interpret my book, Theodorus. You do it so well.
That's what
You find things that I can't find,
did
so it's
for
wonderful.
me. Oh, well,
Yeah.
as I told you, I
Yeah.
wasn't really flattering you.
Yeah, no,
Just
I
couldn't
think it's
write it.
true, but I mean, that's the thing. I mean, that's what our, I mean, our humanity, you know, we're so much of who we are now is cut off from the thing that an experience like that does for you is it expands your humanity, right?
Indeed.
It expands and it lessens it in a way too, because in some ways you forget your civilized humanity and you become even, you know, something greater and lesser at the same time. It was interesting is a stupid word to describe it. It was a profound experience, I would say. Yeah.
And I must tell you, finally,
For me.
Lines of the Mind, for me as a writer, is perfection, humanly speaking. As perfect as it could be.
I'm so touched that
I
you would
read
say
it
that.
2 times.
2
'cause I
times?
wanted to write like you. Really, no wonder why Scribners, when you were very, very young, chose one of your stories
Well,
as one of the
let's
best
hope somebody
stories.
chooses this one too.
Of
Let's hope this one
course.
gets published soon.
Of course, there is no doubt about that. Now,
Yes.
finally, I want us to move to the Turkish professor.
Yes.
I have to be blunt about the
Sure,
Turkish
yes,
professor. Is this a real story?
Yes. It's a real story. They're all real stories. They're all real stories.
The Turkish professor. I have an image of him through your writing. Why did you fall in love with him?
Why? Because he was really a wonderful man, and also I think I fell in love with him because he was my gateway into understanding another culture. understanding myself, and also, in an odd way, he was my gateway to begin writing. Something about him intrigued me. He was my muse. That story is really about his being my muse, enough that I could finally start trying to write. Because at that point, when I was in Turkey, as you know, it's hard to be a writer. It's hard to begin. I mean, I think you love writing in a way that I don't always. I mean, I know you. I always love it when you tell me how you look forward to doing it.
Yes, very much.
Yeah.
It's because I'm a bad writer.
No, by no means. By no means. And it's not that I hate doing it, but I have a more complex relationship with it, and it's been much harder for me to begin. I don't know how old you were when you started, but I couldn't start.
21.
I wanted to start writing sooner, but I really couldn't. I did not have the discipline to do the work. I still often don't. I mean, I really struggle with wanting to work and not wanting to work a lot. And so, anyway, but there was something about this man and my relationship to him and that time that I had in my life that made me want to start writing. And I think that's why I fell in love with him. Honestly, I think it was something about that almost more than anything, because as I got to know him, he was I made up a lot of who he was in my mind, although I think I painted him realistically too. But I think, he was my muse, one of my first muse.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
There was this person. I think in my first marriage, whom I secretly loved. This person never knew that I loved her. And there was this coffee shop that she used to go to at a particular time at night, to which I would go so that I can see her and write.
Yes, there's just something so
Sections
powerful.
of Cambridge days
Yeah.
were written during that period.
About this person. Who never knew.
Who never knew.
Yeah, it's very powerful, isn't it?
It is
It's
incredible.
very motivating.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
I went to that place every single night to see this person, and then every single night resulted in turning out a few paragraphs.
Yeah, and those were the earliest days when you
Yes.
first started writing?
Yes.
At 21?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I was older than that. I was about 28. But yeah, it did the same thing for me. There was something about him that I was able to use, I was able to imagine.
Yes.
Because of my great feeling for him, I was able to, it's almost as if, because you can't actually be with the person, you then, writing becomes a way to be with the person.
Incredible.
When you can't be with the person. I think that's maybe what it was.
Yeah.
To a large
And in
degree.
your case, you're also at the same time in a relationship.
Yes.
An unconsummated one.
Not unconsummated, but starting to stop being consummated. I think is a better way to describe it.
Yeah, I was so upset at this person when I was reading, because I could see your readiness to consummate the relationship and his unreadiness to do so, or to put it more precisely, his indecisiveness.
Yes.
There was a section of him who loved you.
I hope. I don't know.
I think there is, but
Yes.
he loved you only when you're away.
Yes, maybe.
Something to that effect.
Yes, I said that. I think he loved me when I was. He loved me the
well.
best when I was on another continent.
I think you said it extremely well.
Yeah.
You made me imagine that kind of love.
Yes.
I think it's much commoner than we think it is.
Yeah,
because we're always lying to ourselves, as you know. We
Yes.
human beings are liars.
Yes, that's true.
So what you did in this section is you exposed the lies in a very subtle way. And then there is this Turkish professor who is the direct opposite from the portrait that you give of him.
Yes.
Considerate, polished, deeply respectful of you.
Yes.
And you were responding to that. And remember that final decision that he made when he saw the lights late at night.
Yes, yes.
That section stood out in my mind. It made me imagine the condition.
Yes.
And you finally did go in. You met.
Yes, yes, yes.
And he was still respectful of you because you were not ready.
Yes. I hope, maybe, I don't know. You know, later after I thought about it, you know, that was a very tortured thing. I mean, whenever you have an object of great passion, right, and it's not reciprocated in the way you want, or, you know, in the way you fantasized about, you know, for me, you know, I spent a lot of time thinking about it. What you know, what was it that he felt for me? I was never sure, but I think that's one of the reasons I wrote the story, you know, to try to come to terms with that in some way. Mostly my feeling for him, because my feeling for him was probably much greater than his feeling for me.
No, I think he was shy.
Maybe.
A very shy man. There are
Maybe.
such men. I don't
Yes.
know
Yes.
how many of them.
Yes.
Because men take great pride in hiding shyness.
Yes, maybe.
But
That's
in his
an
case,
interesting read of
I
him.
think you were shy. You were also equally fond, as he was to you. He's
Yes.
a Turkish man.
Yes,
You're an American woman.
that's right.
It's in Turkey.
That's right.
Surrounded by friends,
Yes.
by family. There are things he could say and could not say, things that he could do and could not do.
Yes.
And the same was also true about your own hesitation.
Yes.
You are not very daring, you are not very aggressive.
Yes. Yes. In terms of the relationship, no. There was a formality to the relationship.
Exactly.
There was a real formality to that relationship, which was exciting and you know, but at the same time, you know, limiting, because it was hard to know how to interpret what was going on all the time.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we have about 8 minutes left.
Oh, is
so
that
what
it?
we're of course.
Oh my goodness, it's gone so
Because
quickly.
you're such a great writer.
No,
that's
no,
why.
because
There's
you're such a great interviewer.
So much to talk about. So we're going to do part 3 and 4 when you're ready.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
We'll call that our part 3.
Okay.
I consider you to be a regular contributor to Afghan Ascent.
Oh,
Afghan Ascent
wonderful.
is your home.
Yes.
And whenever you have projects that you want to share with readers,
Absolutely.
please let me know.
Yes.
So I would like us to end this interview by reading some of your favorite sections from the Turkish professor.
Okay. Which one? You like the part? Let me think.
I would like you to read, if you can,
Sure.
although this may be difficult to pull out.
Yes,
that
I've got to
section
find it.
that we just talked about.
The one where I see him
Yes.
standing.
Yes.
Do you want to read it, or do you want me? Or
I think-
do you want?
Yes.
Do you want me to read it?
I would like to hear your voice, yes.
Okay, let me find it. It's going to take me a few minutes. So ask me. Is there something you want to ask me while I'm looking for it?
No.
Tell me. Okay, I see where I am.
We have exactly 5 minutes.
Oh, exactly
so
5 minutes.
take your
I hope it
time.
doesn't take me 5 minutes to
take
find
your
it.
time.
But okay. Oh yeah, that's. It was funny, you know. I really did not want to go to Turkey, but I ended up loving it.
Yes.
I really loved it. You know, I went thinking I would. You know, I went to England thinking I was probably going to be with my boyfriend at the time, but then
That's
that
right.
didn't work out.
That's right. You can read any section you want.
Okay, I think I've almost got it. Okay. Then we got people got stabbed all the time. That was the other. Oh, here it is. I found it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this is after we've gotten to know each other and we've been friends, but then I think maybe we're starting to think maybe something a little more is going to happen.
That's right.
All right, so here we go. It was mid-February and slightly warmer, early spring-like weather had already come. I was at the kebab place one night across the street from our building with Dan and Sarah and Peter. These were some other teachers. The store was a narrow space of chrome and neon with a barbecue spit in the window where fatty pieces of mutton were stacked high, sizzling on an upright rotisserie. They were chatting with the kebab men who were Kurds, not Turks, and I was just beginning to appreciate the difference. The Kurds were outraged about a rumor going around that a Dutch shoe company had dared to print the name of God on the sole of a sneaker. One of them declared from behind the gleaming counter, "I kill them all immediately." I was standing in the open doorway by myself, facing the street, when I turned and saw my Turkish professor coming down the sidewalk toward me. The sudden rush of joy I had, as if my growing feeling for him had somehow willed his appearance. But strangely, he hadn't seen me. His head was turned to the side, and he was clearly preoccupied, looking at something higher up. He walked right past me, stopping at the edge of the street, a little beyond the place where I was standing. Then I understood. He was staring up at the light coming from the windows of my apartment. I wish now I could have enjoyed this moment more and also let him perhaps enjoy whatever fantasy he might be having of me. Such a rare and lovely thing will never happen to me again. I was witness to a man gazing up at the window of a beloved, and the beloved was myself. But I couldn't or didn't for some reason, because I'm impatient in general, and whenever I feel an excess of emotion, have the need to insert myself into the situation and to rush. Maybe the potential significance of it all was still too burdensome to me. "Yakshamlat," I said, coming up behind him. He must have blushed or blanched, but it was too dark in the street for me to see. His surprise was obvious. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. You like all the light? You like all the sections with light?
Yeah.
Light on the flashlight, the light coming from my window.
And you're so good at them.
Makes me realize I have a lot of them. It's got to be a thing for
Amazing.
me. I didn't think about it before.
And I couldn't help but think of you at these ages, your curiosity for cultures, for other human beings, which is what your students at Berkeley talk about. And one of them is my own wife,
Yes.
who took a course from you.
Wonderful student.
She always said to me, "This teacher loves human beings."
That's really
It's
really
a gift
lovely to
that
say.
you have.
I suppose I try. I mean, there are times when I get angry too, obviously. But I do love, I do think one of my most consistent and probably the greatest passion of my life is less for writing, although it's close, than it is simply in getting to know people from different parts of the world. That's probably my most sincere, that's the easiest passion for me to fulfill. Writing is much harder.
I feel it every time I encounter you. I feel loved by you, appreciated
as I
and
do,
loved
as I by you.
Thank you so much. This has been your host, Theodros Kiros, for African Ascent.